Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Roma.
How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm really well. And every time we get together, I want to ask you how you are doing, because my situation, I live in France, and relative to the rest of the world, and certainly relative to the Middle East, it is very quiet here. So I always just, my heart just goes out to you, to your country, to Palestine, to the whole situation there. And I find it absolutely remarkable and very plaudable that in the midst of all of this, that you are managing to do what you do. So thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank you
Roma.
very much. This is a very wide spectrum of situations, from peace to war, from calmness to aggressiveness. And by the way, I would like to introduce you, co-editor of international homeopathic journal Spectrum, and co-editor of international homeopathic online journal Interhomeopathy. So let us start from Spectrum. There are so many different things, different remedies, different situations we are dealing with. And my first question will be about your experience with Imponderables. We are waiting impatiently for the Global Empathic Summit on Imponderables, SAR codes, and evolution. And we will deal with the spectrum of Imponderables, spectrum of SAR codes, and we'll try to see the connections between them. So I would like to ask, first of all, what is your experience with Imponderables?
The remedies that I absolutely love. And I don't have a huge experience with them, but I find them to be remedies that are absolutely irreplaceable. And they come up not only through repetition, but they come up sometimes through very strange coincidence. And I found their working to be absolutely, well, like any good remedy, absolutely profound and transformative. I'll just give you a short example, a few short examples of some that I've been using lately. And one was a young woman who came with quite severe depression and terrible mood swings, and beautiful, beautiful young woman, very, very bright, very, very present. But she says, I'm just all over the place. She's a student, and she said, sometimes I just can't concentrate, and other times I'm hyper alert. Very articulate young woman, and she was saying, I'm just all over. So I was thinking, is she manic depressive? What's happening here? But I just let her speak. But mostly what I noticed, which really helped, was the necklace that she had on. And it was a silver chain. And on that silver chain was a little half moon, a little crescent moon. And it caught my eye. And I said, that's really beautiful what you've got on. She said, it's my favorite piece of jewelry. I wear it all the time. And I said, what attracts you? She said, I don't know. I just have this attraction. I've got something with the moon, my moods go up and down with the moon. Even the fluid in my body goes up and down with the moon. I'll at full moon I'll just be bloated, and then when it goes down, so it's not with her period, which is also called the menses, which goes with the moon. This was not synchronized with her period. But so what some people would expect to be around the period, this was around full moon. It was just peaking, and she had no control over her emotions. She was just completely all over this, and her emotions just filled up, like the way the moon pulls water. and her body just filled up with fluid. And after, as the moon cycle was ebbing, she would get back to her normal weight. She could put on other trousers and blouses and things like that. And so this up and down cyclic thing, which coincided, it took a long time for her to figure out that it was the moon and not her menses. And she's done absolutely beautiful on Luna, which we know is lunatic. Their moods go with the moon. So that was just a very, and since then I've seen quite a few. I've only ever seen women reacting really well to this, but the reaction was so marked and so accurate. And so the moment she took the remedy, she started to feel more in herself. And sometimes she still has to retake it. But she said afterward, I think that remedy saved my life because I was becoming suicidal. So, we look at other remedies like aurum or ignatia, whatever, natrium muriatic, and we look at our mineral remedies, some of our deep plant remedies. We often forget the imponderables. That we feel, the imponderables. In her case, she said it's something much bigger than me that takes me over. And you think, is this possession? What is happening here? All kinds of stuff went through my mind, but my eyes kept being attracted to this necklace that she had on, fortunately. So we can be helped in very, very incredible ways. But she said it's bigger than me. And although she was very bright, very articulate, she said, I just have no control over my emotions. And this is what we often see with the imponderables. There's something way vaster than us that seems to take almost possession of us. And yet it's not the same kind of feeling as like a demonic possession or an entity possession or something like that, but just some huge force. This is the way she described it. So that opened up my perspective on, in any case, giving Luna as a remedy. And since then, I've seen several, not only young women, but several other women who describe pretty much the same kind of situation, and sometimes it takes them a while to figure out the connection with the moon, but it's almost lithium-like, these real mood swings. It's very plant-like in the fact that they're very hypersensitive, and some of the plants can be very bipolar as well, because they're very sensitive both ways. But so it's broadened my aspect of prescription, in including, in any case, this one as an imponderable. And another one that I've stumbled on recently, and in France, there's a very well-known, very experienced homeopath named Jacques Ichard, very experienced. He's worked a lot with Rajan, and he has written a book which, for the moment, is only in French. It's being translated into English, and it's a book on the imponderables. So he's done a lot of work on the imponderables. And I told you recently about one of the experiences that we had after Jacques gave a weekend-long lecture on the imponderables. And one of the remedies that he discussed was the remedy thyme, made from, I'm not quite sure how this remedy was actually made, but it has to do with the aspect of chronological time. And I was fascinated by this remedy because it just made me think so much of a patient of mine who had these terrible issues with time. She could never be on time for an appointment. She was just either way too early or way too late or way too this. She just said, I've got no. So I was very interested in this remedy thyme. And 2-day seminar. This was the last remedy he described. And the next day, I had a whole series of patients in Toulouse, which is where the seminar was. And I showed up, and my first patient was going to be, it was going to be a 2-hour case because he was coming for the first time. So I had a 2-hour slot. And I waited and I waited. And an hour and a half later, he showed up and he said, "Oh my God, I didn't get lost, but I got lost in time. This never happens to me. I just don't know what happened. I don't know. I'm really good at organizing things. I'm very good at timing. I'm so sorry. We only had a half an hour to do the consultation and we organized the rest for later." And he was so apologetic. He said, "This never happens to me." But meanwhile, I was having a cup of tea with the other woman in the practice, who is actually the daughter of Shakishar. And she was waiting for her first patient. And she said, "This person is always on time. I don't know why she's not showing up, but her first patient showed up half an hour late." And it went through the whole day like that. Either our patients, every single patient for both of us, showed up either way too late or way too early. And so our whole schedule was completely out of whack. And the waiting room was either too full or it was empty. There were people sitting in the hallway because too many people were coming at the wrong times. And it was the most incredible experience. And I thought, hey, this is what happens when you're so engrossed in something that really catches your attention and the attention of this other woman as well, the other homeopath. It has a way broader experience than just our own little world. And I think this is something very imponderable as well. You know, it goes way beyond what we think. It has huge ramifications. I ended up giving it to the patient that I'd been thinking of, the one who never turned up on time, and thank goodness it worked for her as well.
Wow.
So that was quite a lovely remedy, but a very interesting experience.
Yeah, it's interesting experience, and the one my colleague told me that her husband took a remedy time just to have a small proving about it, and I asked her and how he is doing, and she said he is lost in time. 1 week I didn't see him at all. He was at some place but without time, and it's very close to what you just told about being lost in time. And another thing I want to suggest, propose you to comment. In the beginning, I told that we are going to look for connections between imponderables and sarcodes, because imponderables, this is a big, huge force which is influencing our lives, and the sarcodes, this is a product of something which was brought from concrete, from material, from tissue, and you know, and there are two remedies. I will put them together now. One is histamine and another is thyme. And histamine has a very interesting symptom. It is impatient and desire to be in time and desire to be precise. And these are patients, they come into your clinic 5 minutes before, and they will be
very, very in a hurry, in a terrible hurry. Yes.
Yeah, it's a hurry because it should be in it. And here is the opposite of it: time, you know, endless, nothing. There is no border of time. So very interesting. And we see here imponderable and sarcode.
I'll give you a little anecdote about histamine, because the place where I am doing this presentation from, this video, it's friends of mine, and I look after their cats when they're not here, and their cats and I are very good friends, so I treat their cats as well. And one day, the woman said, I don't know what's wrong with our cat. He's just gone absolutely crazy. He's running all over the place. He cannot stop. He just cannot stop. And he's just in this frenzy all the time. And I observed the cat for a while, and it was this frenzy of running around and had to be in motion. I thought, okay, what's going on? And I said, is he sneezing? And he said, yes, he's sneezing all the time at the moment. And I said, I think he's allergic to something. I think this is a histamine reaction. Because I just had that idea because they were doing a lot of renovations in their house, and there was a lot of stuff and chemicals and all sorts of stuff. But it was just this idea. I think because I had read once a very beautiful case of Jaya Shah about a man who needed histamine, and he had to be in movement all the time, and he had to go on a bus as long as something was moving, he was okay. And this cat reminded me of that man on the bus. And one dose of histamine, 200, and the cat just, and the allergic reaction was over. So that, as you say, that hurry.
And a coincidence, Deborah. We like coincidences. We are collecting them. But another coincidence, first case of histamine, I heard from Dr. Jayasha.
Hey, yeah.
And it was a case of one person who was so stressed to be in time, and he was calling to the clinic and asking to be the last or first, I don't remember exactly, but to be exactly in time that nothing will bother him, nothing will interrupt his being in time, being precise. And he received the histamine that time. But the behavior of your cat, of this cat with histamine, when you said that it was like running and all over, remind me another case once you told me with this image of small boat in a sea. Do you remember? And
yes,
you prescribed a very beautiful imponderable remedies.
Yes,
Can you please remind this case?
Yes. So this was another woman who I had been treating for quite some time, and she had quite a tempestuous childhood, you might say. Very, very bright woman, very articulate, rather like the Luna woman, but very depressed again. And she talked a lot about her childhood. Now, I knew her sister, I knew her mother, I knew several family members, and so I knew a lot about the family history. And the mother had been severely depressed and quite alcoholic when this girl was young. The two girls were young. And there was a lot of turmoil in the family. And in her teens, this young woman became very depressed and anorexic and quite suicidal. She actually had quite some suicide attempts as well. And so I treated her for quite some time without a lot of success, but she just liked being listened to and having conversations and getting the moral support. But I never had the feeling that I had really got a very, very good remedy for her. And I'm not quite sure how we got there, but I just said, just give me a feeling for what it was like for you in your childhood. Because she kept going back to her teens in her childhood with this alcoholic mother and a father who was hardly there. And I said, give me the feeling. What was that like? And she said, I feel like I'm in a boat at sea, and I'm seasick. She said, I'm seasick, but I feel like I'm in a boat at sea and I've got no footing. And I started just with tobacco, and that didn't really do anything. But to me, tobacco is such a good remedy when there's been a very tumultuous childhood with no footing. And I was quite puzzled as to why this wasn't working. And so I pondered, and one of the Imponderables came up, and that was Tempesta. And Tempesta is another of the remedies that Shakeshar has proved. And I gave it to her in a 1M, and she says, this centers me. This brings me back to myself. This, she said, until now, the image that I've always had of myself was of this little boat in a storm at sea. And she's quite a good painter, and she'd made several paintings actually of a little boat being swamped in a storm at sea in a tempest. And she had also had, you might call it, tempestuous love affairs, and everything in her life was very tempestuous, very fraught, and so it brought a calm sea into this very stormy sea that she had been living all her life.
You mentioned the word centered. This remedy centered her, and we
Yes.
know that the most safe, calm, and easy place in a storm, in a tempesta, is a middle of typhoon,
Absolutely.
middle of everything. So it is interesting that the remedy brings back this center, and she is centered once more.
Yeah, you're right. It is the center of the storm because nothing in her life around her changed. Well, actually, I did treat her mother, and so her mother has got a lot better since then. But her outward life was still quite difficult. But she said, you know, I like that word, centered in that.
Yeah, and if we are talking about center, once we had a conversation with you that there is a center of everything. There is a point from where everything started. Do you remember? We discussed the source of everything, and we came to this not only philosophical but even very practical point that if we are helping person to become closer to the source of everything, it will help him to take all different parts which are spread around and become more centered, more whole, more holistic.
Mm.
And in this sense, I would like to discuss with you another remedy called rainbow.
Mm. Mm.
It is like coming from one source and dispersed for 7 main colors. And as a discussion, just want to mention that one case was told us at the same meeting by Andreas Björndal that after some terroristic attack in Oslo, where pieces of glass were spread all around, and he made proving from this spreaded pieces of destroyed something, destroyed material.
He did it with 2 things, I think. With the glass, the shattered glass, and with some of the rose petals that had been put out for the dead people. I know, because they always put flowers for the deceased. So he combined the rose petals with the glass, and he did a proving of that. And
So
yeah,
please continue.
it was actually the two, and this is very important in what we're discussing. It was the two sides, the shattered glass and the rose petals. And here we have something that is, so we have the two opposites coming together. And as he was mentioning recently when he was discussing this, he said in that proving there were a lot of rainbows as a theme showing up. So in rainbow, there is that theme of as you were saying, the source, where all the light starts as one, and it is dispersed into all colors, not just the seven that we basically see, but everything is in there. Every color is in there. So every vibration is in there. So it is very source. And from this source, this one source at the beginning, the genesis, you might say, comes everything. So this remedy, rainbow, I'm not an expert on this, but the idea fascinates me, and I've actually ended up naming my house Arc-en-Ciel for a certain reason. I wanted to name my house, and I was asking what name it should be. And I went outside, and it was raining, and there was this gorgeous double rainbow. And I said, okay, that's the name of my house, Arc-en-Ciel, a rainbow. So I have this special connection with it. And then recently, actually for quite a while, I've been hearing about rainbow as a very important remedy in COVID. A few friends of mine have given it with a lot of success in COVID, Spectrum or rainbow. And I was recently in Holland and meeting up with these same friends again, and they said, this can be very much a remedy for our time, the time that we're living in. The time of COVID has been a time of separation. Separation has always been there. This is our human delusion, is we are separate. It's very human delusion. Whereas in the beginning, we are all together. We come from the same source, but for one or other reason, we get dispersed and each goes their own way, and we go into individuality. But in the beginning, we can come back to that place where we are all one. We are, and retain our individuality. There's no either or. So how do we get back to that place? And that is being reminded. So we can have remedies that can remind us of the union of opposites, or that in this arc, everything is allowed. So in English, there's this expression, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And for me, the pot of gold it's here. When you are able to bridge, rainbow is a bridge. When you're able to bridge the opposites in whatever situation, you reach that pot of gold, which is your heart, which is the gold in your heart, which is the gold where we all come from. And so I think that personally, I think that this is what we sometimes see in no matter which remedy we give. If it's a really, really good remedy, we find people touching that place in themselves where they're just in love with the whole of life, and they lose that sense of separation. So I think there are two ways of approaching that. What we usually do homeopathically, we try to take away the barriers to that. We give accurate remedies for where someone is stuck. And this is absolutely necessary. We need to address where they're at. And at the same time, what is bubbling up in me and what was inspired by my friends, this conversation and meditation actually with my two friends, was we can perhaps alternate the acute remedies like you need in Israel, Palestine at the moment. You need your aconite, you need your gersemium, you need opium, you need all the acutes in very high potencies. And at the same time, it is also perhaps very necessary and very healing to have this sense, hey, a bridge between the opposites. The healing of war, the healing of separation is possible. And so perhaps rainbow or spectrum can contribute to nourishing this space in ourselves, helping us to remember where we actually come from, that we come from unity. Now, some of the proving symptoms of spectrum are very, very reminiscent of the time that we are in now. So I think I sent a list of these, of some of the very interesting ones. I don't have it with me at this moment, but you might have it on hand.
You will present them at the summit.
Yes, yeah. So they're very interesting symptoms like end of the world, World War III, forest fires, abandonment. These very, very specific rubrics, very specific feelings that resonate highly with the way the world is feeling at this moment. So it's a remedy that I almost feel like putting in the drinking water.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like John Lennon with his Imagine
Yeah,
all the people. It's kind of rainbow energy.
yeah, absolutely. 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 Why not?
And now I would like us to imagine that we are coming together at least at the 2nd of November at the Global Homeopathic Summit. And I'm so glad that you will be part of it and you
Yes,
will
me too. Thank you.
deliver a lecture there. So thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you. Thank you,
All our
Roman.
conversation are so interesting.
Yes, well, it's you always spark such interesting topics. So thank you. Very good luck with your work and lots of love.
Thank you very much.
Sending you rainbows.